The intake form listed him as cooperative. That was the word they used, as if it were a compliment rather than a baseline expectation for any organism brought aboard Vethera station under voluntary quarantine protocol. I have processed 11,000 intake forms over my career. Cooperative is what you write when there is nothing else to note. His name was Garrison, Warren Garrison, a mid-grade environmental technician, from what the Earth consulates called a remote posting. A water management, planet's facility teams, northern latitudes. He had been flagged not for aggression, not for infection. Because his transit bioscan had returned a metabolic rate, our equipment initially scored as a calibration error. The technician on duty had run the scan 3 times, logged a malfunction and cleared him through. Only when his file reached intake review that someone thought to cross-reference the readings rather than dismiss them. Someone was a junior analyst who no longer works in this department. Because after she forwarded the file and the chain of observation reached my desk, I absorbed her into my team immediately. I met Garrison in examination room 4 on his second morning aboard. He was sitting on the edge of the platform with his hands on his knees, looking at the wall display. The way people look at things, they are not reading. He was not anxious. That was the first thing I noted. Our admission suite is not designed to be comfortable. The lighting is calibrated to a spectrum most organisms find faintly oppressive. The temperature sits 4 degrees below what the human consular files list as their comfort threshold. The platform is elevated and slightly angled to make relaxed sitting difficult. Garrison sat relaxed. He nodded when I entered and asked if there was a reason the room was so cold or if that was just how the station ran. I told him it was a calibration standard. He said that was fair, and asked whether there might be something to eat at any point, because he had missed breakfast. I told him we would see to that shortly, and asked him to extend his arm. The first compound we introduced was Velorothi Compound 7, a metabolic dampener. It slows cellular respiration in the peripheral nervous system to roughly 60% of baseline, producing mild cooperative drowsiness within 4 minutes. We have used it on 2,047 subjects at this station. It has never failed. I watched the injection site and waited. At 4 minutes, he asked again about breakfast. The metabolic panel showed the compound present in his bloodstream. Uptake confirmed within 2 minutes, which was normal. What was not normal was the enzymatic activity in the liver, which I initially read as a rendering artifact. The display showed a degradation curve that should have taken 40 minutes completing in something closer to 11. I asked the system to recalculate. It returned the same figure. Garrison said he felt a little warm. He looked at the injection site and said it tingled. That was the full extent of his pharmacological response to a compound that, at that dose, would have sedated a Varathi bull for the better part of a morning cycle. I moved to Compound 12. Compound 12 is listed in the station's pharmacological index under General Suspension Agents, Category 1. We use it when a subject requires full immobilization for deep tissue holographic reconstruction, the kind of scan that demands complete cellular stillness for 40 minutes. The dose I administered was 0.8 of the standard index weight for his body mass, a broad safety margin. I was not experimenting recklessly. I was following protocol for a subject who had resisted a lower-tier compound. He went quiet for about 90 seconds. His eyes tracked to the ceiling. I thought briefly that we had achieved the expected effect. Then he blinked, looked at me and said, "That one was stronger." I asked him what he felt. He said it was like standing up too fast. A brief drop in the head, a little gray at the edges, and then it passed. He asked if that was what I had been going for, because if so, he was not sure it had worked. The panel confirmed Compound 12 had been fully processed and cleared in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. The Human Pharmacological Index lists standard clearance time as between 120 and 200 minutes. I reread the entry. I had not misremembered it. I set down my notation tool and looked at him. He watched me with the expression humans wear when they suspect they have done something unusual and are not certain whether to apologize for it. Still sitting with his hands on his knees, I said as evenly as I could, "Mr. Garrison, are you aware that your body is metabolizing these compounds at approximately 12 to 18 times the recorded baseline for your species. He considered this, he said. Is that bad? I told him it was not bad for him. I told him it was extremely confusing for me. He said he had always processed things quickly. Alcohol, painkillers, the mild sedatives used on him during a surgical procedure several years ago that had, by his account, not worked especially well and had required the team to use significantly more than planned. He had assumed this was simply how his body was built. His mother had been the same way, and her mother before her. Doctors had noted it over the years as a curiosity. No one had characterized it as anything beyond a personal inconvenience. I ran the full holographic scan relying on his voluntary stillness, which was adequate. The anatomy was unremarkable in every other respect. Organ placement, skeletal density, tissue composition, all within human standard range. The liver read as normal size and structure by every metric except one. The enzymatic cascade responsible for molecular breakdown was running, continuously at a level the index categorized as a stress response, meaning his body, at rest, was doing something other organisms' bodies only did under chemical or thermal assault, doing it as baseline function, without apparent cost, without apparent effort, and without the subject noticing. There is a concept in medical taxonomy we call a phantom classification, a trait that exists clearly in the subject, but falls outside every established category, so the indexing system has nowhere to file it. The software assigns a holding flag and waits for a taxonomist to resolve the entry. Garrison's enzymatic profile generated 4 phantom classifications before the system stopped trying and issued a general advisory that my equipment require recalibration. I filed a manual override of the advisory. I sent the full scan, the metabolic panel, and both compound administration records to the Station pharmacological registry, flagged as a type 1 anomaly. A second copy went to Central Medical Oversight at Heth Prime. I attached a recommendation that the Human Pharmacological Index, compiled primarily theoretical models and a limited Earthside clinical sample, be reviewed against direct metabolic observation before informing any future sedation, surgical, or containment protocols for human subjects. I also sent a quieter note to the intake registry recommending that all chemical containment protocols for human passengers be re-evaluated from the ground up. Protocols currently on file appeared to have been designed for a species that processed foreign compounds at roughly the same rate as everyone else. Humans, I wrote, do not process foreign compounds at the same rate as everyone else. Humans process foreign compounds the way a furnace processes paper. Before Garrison left, I arranged for a meal to be sent to his quarters. He thanked me and asked whether the tests had found anything interesting. I told him we had found exactly what we were looking for. This was not entirely accurate. What we had found was something for which no one had thought to look, because the assumption had always been that a species with no natural chemical defenses would respond to agents in a predictable, manageable way. The assumption had been the error. I closed the file, flagged it for immediate routing to the Pharmacological Defense Subcommittee, and sat for a long while in examination room 4 after he had gone, the hum of the station's ventilation the only sound. His scan was still on the wall display, the liver enzyme cascade running at rest, doing in a body at peace what our most aggressive compounds try and fail to do. We had mapped every system. We had sequenced the proteins and charted the organ weights and cataloged the cellular architecture with equipment sensitive enough to distinguish individual membrane layers. We had not thought to ask what happened to a foreign molecule the moment it arrived. Now I knew. I noted it in the file and recommended, in the plainest language I could produce, that the registry update its hazard classification for human subjects under chemical protocol. Not because they are dangerous, because what is dangerous to them simply does not last long enough to matter.